Hello, BookTube, and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. These are the books that I've been reading this week. One of them is a comic book. We'll get to that in a moment. And then I've been continuing with Hilary Mantel, The Mirror and the Light, and Journey to the West, Volume 4. But this past Monday, for the month of October, Halloween month, I decided to start Dracula. So a Halloween read here. This is something actually I've been planning to do all year, is do Dracula this year in October. Now, with the addition of Dracula, not counting the comic book, that brings the books I'm currently reading up to 3, which is actually one more book than I can comfortably handle. Before kids, it would have been okay, but now that I've got 2 kids, there's just not enough time in my week to juggle 3 books. But what can you do? I really wanted to do some sort of horror classic for the month of October, Halloween tradition. I was already into the Thomas Cromwell trilogy, so I had to keep going with that. I'm already 4 volumes into Journey to the West, so I had to keep going with that. So I'm going to try and juggle this. And as I mentioned in my started video for Dracula, which I'll link to in the description down below, I'm going to really push to finish this book in the month of October. I'm a slow reader, so it's a little bit of a push for me, but I'm going to prioritize this book, which means, at least for the month of October, until I finish Dracula, these 2 books are on the back burner. So I've read a little over 10 pages in each of these books, but don't really have anything to report on either of them. So we'll just put these aside for this week. Once I've got something more to report, maybe I'll talk about these more next week, or maybe we'll just wait to talk about them until I finish Dracula and I can concentrate on them again. But yeah, Dracula. Really going to try and finish this book by the end of October. I feel silly saying that on BookTube, because I know there are all sorts of BookTubers who are reading like 12 horror books for October. But we all read at our own speeds, huh? So there's 365 pages here. We're 1 week into October now, and I've read 110. So I'm on track. Actually, up until yesterday, I only had about 70 pages read, but I actually had a little bit of free time at work today, which allowed me to get another 40 pages this afternoon done. So I'm looking a lot better at the end of today than I was at the beginning of it. So yeah, Dracula. What to say about Dracula? As I mentioned, this is a reread. I've done this as an audiobook back in 2001, and I've also read numerous abridged or illustrated versions of Dracula over the years. In fact, so many that as I was reading through the first few chapters, I began to question whether it was really valuable for me to reread this. I thought of all the classic books that I've read over the years that I barely remember, that I'm way overdue on a reread for. Huge list. But Dracula, actually, I remember very well. And again, I think this is partly because I've kept it fresh in my memory with all the abridged versions or all the graded reader versions I've used in my ESL classrooms. But yeah, certainly at least the beginning part where Jonathan Harker goes to Castle Dracula, all those famous set pieces are just so what's the word I want to use? So cemented in my mind that it was just kind of feeling like I was going through the familiar paces again, right? So he doesn't see Dracula in the mirror. the woman crying for her child, seeing Dracula crawling down the castle wall, the three vampire women who want to kiss him when he sleeps in the wrong room, even a lot of the dialogue of listen to them howling, the children of the night, what music do they make? I think I've mangled that quote a little bit, but a lot of the dialogue is very familiar as well. The beginning chapters where how many chapters is it? 4 or is it 5 chapters in Castle Dracula? 4 chapters. The first 4 chapters in Castle Dracula are, in one sense, the best chapters of the book, or at least the most atmospheric chapters. I mean, after those first 4 chapters, we go back to England, and so much of what we associated with the Dracula story, like the castle up on the mountain, basically just the spooky Castle Dracula and all the atmosphere that goes with it, is just only in the first 4 chapters out of 28 chapters in this book. So in terms of all the spooky, Transylvania, all that kind of stuff, the strange Eastern customs, all that kind of stuff that we associate with this novel is really just only in those short first 4 chapters. Well, actually, they're not that short. How many pages are the first 4 chapters? Okay, about the first 50 pages. Of course, page counts are going to vary by edition, isn't it? So that's kind of meaningless. But anyways, you can see here there's this much of the book. Out of this much is the part in Castle Dracula. Well, they do go back to Castle Dracula at the end, don't they? But mainly the book is in England. All the spooky atmosphere and the classic Transylvania stuff comes in there. And there's a lot of talk about the local superstition and the Slovaks and the Gypsies and the Romanians. It strikes me as a book that perhaps deals in stereotypes, something perhaps that couldn't get written today. I don't think, just because it's pulling on the stereotypes of these strange Easterners. But it's definitely got an atmosphere to it. Actually, speaking of the Transylvania and the Hungarian Empire, I am, in my podcasting life right now, working my way through the revolutions of 1848, season 7 of Mike Duncan's Revolutions podcast, which deals with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the various peoples in it, and has parts on Transylvania. So the whole history of the Magyars and the Huns and the Hungarians that are interspersed in here. Well, it's not really a history that's interspersed, but it's allusions to the history that are interspersed in here. I'm making that connection with the history of Hungary that I'm learning from the podcast I'm listening to. So that's a little connection between my listening and my reading. Sorry, the point I'm trying to get to with all that is, in spite of the great atmosphere, the plot stalls out a bit at Castle Dracula. It's just a lot of Jonathan Harker saying, okay, Count is getting really suspicious again. I go to sleep, I meet him, he's acting weird again. He asks me some questions, we go to sleep, I meet him again the next day. It's got a little bit of a repetitive feel where and they're not really going anywhere. They're just in Castle Dracula. there's maybe a little bit of a claustrophobic feel to it, which may be somewhat intentional because Jonathan Harker is feeling trapped in Castle Dracula, so maybe that's part of the atmosphere. But I was somewhat relieved, actually, when we left Castle Dracula behind and switched to London. To England. Now, in England, I think most people are familiar with the basics of the story, right? We meet Lucy and Mina, who the conceit of this this novel is that it's like a found documents novel. So there's no central narrator. It's just people's letters to each other and people's journals that have been assembled by an editor into this book. Yeah, Lucy and Mina are really boring characters, aren't they? I'd be interested, actually, maybe in what a female critic would think of this book, because it's obviously written by a man. So, maybe the fact that Mina and Lucy come off as so bland is just Bram Stoker's inability to write good female characters. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I also feel like Lucy and Mina are largely interchangeable. So that their circumstances and their character arcs are different. But their personalities seem to be pretty much the same, right? Or am I'm missing something? And those opening chapters when we meet Lucy and Mina, the first few letters especially that they exchange to each other, they're talking about how weak women are and how great men are. Let me see if I can find a good quotation here. It comes up a few different times. Here we go. I suppose that we women are such cowards that we think a man will save us from our fears and we marry him. Where else is it? Here. My dear Mina, why are men so noble when we women are so little worthy of them? It comes up a few different times in those first few letters they have to each other. You have to keep in mind that this is a man writing all this, which, although I don't know. What do you guys think? The saving grace, I guess, is that there are a lot of short letters going back and forth and a lot of short journal entries. And the narrator, or the point of view, changes quite often. It's Mina's letter, it's Lucy's letter, it's Dr. Seward's diary, a lot of short entries. So in that way, it is kind of good for a modern short attention span. That it moves along at a fairly good clip. But I don't know. Lucy is obviously headed towards tragedy, but aside from just the picture of kind of an innocent girl, there's not really much character there for me to latch on to, I feel like. But maybe that's true in a lot of horror books. I don't know. Anyways, I'm up to now. But the other thing as well is, I don't know. We'll see how the middle of this book pans out. I've got memories of being bored a little bit by this the first time I read it, but we'll see how the middle of it pans out. Okay. Sorry for my inability to summarize better, but moving right along. I've also started this week The Incredible Hulk Crossroads. This is volume 13. It's got stories from 1984 and 1985. So I finished the epic collection of Thor that I bought out here in Vietnam. So now onto the second epic collection I found in the bookstores here. This is The Incredible Hulk. So I never really read any of the Hulk comics as a kid, although of course everybody was familiar with Hulk from TV and movies. But picking this up here, it appears that when this collection takes place in '84, the Hulk was Bruce Banner had. So I think, according to Wikipedia, the Hulk has gone through different stages over his long career in comic books. Apparently, at this point, we're just coming off of the stage where Bruce Banner has control over the Hulk. So I think this is kind of like the way he was portrayed in that Avengers Endgame movie, where Bruce Banner can transform into the Hulk but still maintain his Bruce Banner persona. So that had been the way the Hulk had been operating. But then Nightmare is one of Doctor Strange's antagonists, gets inside Hulk's head and is able to destroy Bruce Banner's psyche and just let the Hulk loose. But now the Hulk is even more malevolent than before. Whereas in the past, the Hulk would only just attack people who attacked him. Now the Hulk just attacks anybody. So he's just walking down the street and he's attacking innocent people who are wandering around. So there's a big battle in which the rest of the Avengers try to bring him under control. And there's a big back and forth between Hulk and Thor. But eventually, Doctor Strange ends up sending Hulk into another dimension where Hulk is now in this weird crossroads type place where he can choose any world to go into. But then as soon as Hulk is dissatisfied with that world, he goes back to the Crossroads. This is a failsafe Doctor Strange put in. And that, I think, is a storyline which it looks like it's going to cover most of the rest of this collection. Hulk just traveling through magical worlds in this dimension that Doctor Strange has sent him to. So it looks like there could be some interesting stories here. We'll have to see how the rest of the book pans out. The Hulk... Well, we'll see. This is the first collection of his, the first Hulk collection that I've ever read. Certainly my impression of the Hulk from the movies and TV is that the conflict between Bruce Banner and Hulk can be interesting. But the Hulk himself rampaging for too long tends to just bore me. There was a little bit of a danger of that happening in the first parts of this collection. But we'll see what happens in the second part of the collection. All right, and that's all for this week. So I will see you next week, BookTube. Thank you.